Hello and most welcome to 1940 of the series H. We will today make a go through of a very interesting scientific article that goes into what was earlier suggested by the philosopher, science writer Rupert Sheldrake. It's an article from Faculty Article Quantum Physics of September 8th, 2019. It's by William Brown and Dr. Amira Valbaker, who are from the RSF research. They are RSF research scientists. In a new study, Michael Parker and Chris James posed the question: how does nature produce such stunning symmetry and order in many systems observed across enormous scales? Under a microscope, a snowflake shows intricate patterning and remarkable symmetry. And in a telescope, the same is observed for spiral galaxies up to 500,000 light years across. Across, indeed. Both of these systems are made of innumerable subunits, be they water molecules or stars and planets, which should be completely oblivious to the overall configuration of the conglomerate. That is to say, the behavior of these systems at the scales that matter, the fundamental units of which they are composed, should be completely random aside from some formative causation arising from intermolecular or intergravitational interactions, which are not long range. Not long range. the question then becomes, what is the causative ordering parameters that results in chaotically interacting many body systems coming together in spectacular symmetry and ordered geometrical configurations? The physics that describes the microscale ordering of a system is known as entropy. So obviously this is where we must turn. When we talk about entropy, we have to remember that the idea of entropy was derived assuming an isolated or closed system where an increase of entropy is essentially an increase in the amount of lost energy. Lost energy! Thermodynamically speaking, the system will be tending towards a state of thermal equilibrium, a state where no more work can be done on the system unless from external sources. This is the state of maximal entropy. Entropy, indeed. Historically, and even in some modern day compelling theories, the causative ordering force was postulated to be a morphogenic field. A morphogenic field. A field that shaped the morphogenesis of objects much like a magnetic field would do to iron fillings. Fillings, indeed. Such a notion was swiftly dismissed by scientists as it was presumed to require some kind of magical force to exert the ordering influence, a force not known to physics. Not known. Holomorphic info-entropy. Holomorphic info-entropy. Now, however, researchers James and Parker have mathematically described the morphogenic field and identify the force carrier and entropic force. Entropic force! The researchers described a new concept linking information and entropy together. Together, 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 we're doing the best. What can we do when we skip the rest? Through the system's elemental parts in what they term holomorphic infoentropy. Holomorphic infoentropy. Much like the linking of space and time into the unitary manifold of space-time, or electricity and magnetism into electromagnetism. And just and just like in the letter terms, where the change in state of one results in a change in state of the other, like coupled oscillating electric and magnetic fields. A change in information or entropy results in the same reciprocal influence. 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 A quote here from Science Rep, Volume 9. We showed that entropy and information can be treated as a field and that they are related to geometry. Geometry. Think of the two strands of the DNA double helix winding around each other. Light waves have the same structure, where the two strands are the electric and the magnetic field. The magnetic field. We showed mathematically that the relationship between information and entropy can be visualized using just the same geometry. Geometry. What a such an easy game to play. This is from Chris James and Michael Parker. James is spelled with an I, not an A. Using the info entropy theoretic, the researchers studied one particularly prevalent geometric configuration, the double helix and double logarithmic spiral. Spira mirabilis, the marvelous spiral, a double logarithmic spiral that occurs ubiquitously in nature. The turnings of the logarithmic spiral increase in geometric progression. In geometric progression. That is, their analysis shows that the double helical and double logarithmic spiral trajectories in space-time are maximum entropy states. That is to say that among all possible ways the system can be configured, the spiral and the double helix maximize entropy and a system will always go to the state that maximizes entropy, making this configuration the most stable or equilibrium condition available to the system, and hence the ubiquity of these structures in nature, in nature, in nature. In nature. Next chapter. Spirals everywhere. The double helix is well known from the geometrical configuration of polymerized nucleic acids, the iconic DNA double helix spiral. Since the researcher had now devised a means to calculate the entropy of such a configuration, they used the method to calculate the exact energy difference between two configurations of DNA. The canonical B form and a less well-known yet still physiological salient structure, the P form DNA. The pDNA form is interesting in that each helical turn occurs each 2.62 bases, while in the B form each turn occurs every 10.4 turns. Indeed, turns. So there is a lot of potential energy, info energy, excuse me, stored in the P form, and James and Parker were able to exactly calculate this energy difference, agreeing with the precise measurement of Bryant et al. It's a little illustration here, the next page. Kristen P-form DNA label pDNA above. This new structure is 75% longer than the B form, with just 2.62 bases per turn. Per turn. Most surprisingly, the phosphate backbone, purple, which in B form DNA wraps around the base, is on the inside. On the inside. How strange. Holographic temperature and superfluous dark matter. Extending this analysis to an astronomically larger scale, the researchers then looked at spiral galaxies. Noting that spiral galaxies are double spirals, just as DNA is a double helix. Mathematically speaking, they have similar geometries. Quote, "It is not surprising that the same entropic treatment applies from the nanoscale to the cosmic, since entropy is intrinsically scaleless." Scaleless. To test their theory, they started with our very own galaxy, the Milky Way, and set about calculating its mass. Its mass. Its mass. Roger Penrose was able to show that the entropy of a galaxy is dominated by its central supermassive black hole. Black hole! Black hole! So utilizing the famous Hawking and Beakenstein entropy equation, the entropy was calculated for the 4.3 million solar mass supermassive black hole. As discovered by Hawking, a temperature for the black hole event horizon was also calculated. Calculated! Calculated! The product of this temperature and the entropy can then be calculated as an energy from which a mass can be determined using Einstein's famous equation. Equation of Einstein: E equals mc in square. Equation of Einstein. According to James and Parker, if you can assign a temperature to the black hole event horizon, then it follows that you can assign a temperature to a galaxy surface horizon. Horizon. Horizon, horizon, I see you from afar. Utilizing the holomorphic info entropy equations, they calculated the galactic radius and what they term the holographic temperature. Now, with a holographic temperature and the entropy of the Milky Way, they were able to calculate its mass, which came out to approximately 0.94 trillion solar masses. Remarkably close to the virial mass of the galaxy, about 1.3 trillion solar masses. Note that the observable mass of the Milky Way is only around 250 billion solar masses, give or take 100 billion. About 100 billion. However, the virial mass is the mass determined from the observed asymptotic velocity curve, which cannot be accounted for by the visible mass of the galaxy. Hence, the postulation of dark matter. What the calculations show is that the postulation of dark matter, which has failed every attempt of detection, is superfluous. It's superfluous. The entropic force that pushes the galaxy into a double logarithmic geometry is accounting for the additional energy causing the anomalous velocity profiles of galaxy. Of galaxies all over the place, how they interact. There is therefore a veritable morphogenic field that is the source of causative formation via an emergent entropic force. A quote from James and Parker, "The stars in the galaxy are simply choreographed by an entropy force to line up into a pair of such spirals to maximize entropy." Entropy, entropy. RSF in perspective. This work follows a similar approach to the unified physics approach, which is essentially a scale invariant model from the quantum to the biological and the cosmological scale. Like the generalized holographic approach offered by Nassim Haramein, James and Parker see the entropy of the system as the guiding force behind the structure, size, and mass of the system. In their work, they are focusing on the surface entropy of a helical structure. Helical structure! Where the size is governed by the changing volume relative to the Planck scale. Not surprisingly, they find a result approximately equal to that found by Haramein's generalized holographic approach. And that ends the article by William Brown and Dr. Amira Baker. So going into these larger physics, and this is something I suspected for quite some time, decades, the genical fields of Sheldrake are out there, and what James and Parker are doing is getting rid of the superfluous dark matter by instead having something much more understandable, which is form. I will not go into the details here, but it's form in the mathematical sense of entropy. And there are three important takeaways, but the first one, they are made up of innumerable subunits, which can be they water molecules of stars and planets, and they should be and behave completely oblivious to the overall configuration of the conglomerate. Let me dissect that. The normal physical, classical physical idea is that the effects we see in the world are stemming from bottom to top, or that the smallest units together decides properties, space and time, what we have, so to speak. That disappears. Maybe you can see this with scale invariance. Scale invariance, what does it mean? It means small and big doesn't make any difference. And therefore, less or one and a bazillion, a trillion doesn't matter. It is the form that matters. And that form is, as it says here, oblivious to the forces or the properties of the atoms or molecules that make them up. Absolutely oblivious. The form is the most important. I think you can recognize Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic field here. He also says, fourth and foremost is the field, the shape. The shape is more important than the idea or the effects of material disjunct objects. So you see, the universe is not built up by small entities that make up a star. No, it's the wholeness first and foremost. And that wholeness is oblivious to the smaller parts. That is not a small claim, I dare to say. It's just an incredible claim. And I'm sorry, maybe I haven't translated enough to ordinary language. But I'd say this really goes against the grain of all thinking. And the reason why these structures, you can see in the article, in a shell, you can see it in the Fibonacci series, the golden cut, and many other things. The form comes first. And it is scale invariant. So the shellfish can look exactly the same as a vast galaxy. It's just incredible. It's beyond belief. But this is exactly what we are seeing. It's completely scale invariant. The form first. And the form is not even material. And there are secondary effects, as I mentioned, is that cause and effect by default comes out of place. It's the larger things and their forms that guide what will happen. So no longer seem cause and effect to be the ruling system, and thereby this will also have effects on what we perceive time to be. Because most commonly time is seen as a ticking of a clock or something causative. Something inside the clock is causing it to tick, and therefore time ticks because small causal events pushes each other somehow, causative. I think we can have very good use here of Wittgenstein, because the idea of not using a criterion, having the idea that you can make up your own words without criterion, is a bit like that. Cause and effect is the black box, the beetle box. Into it we shove everything that we cannot understand, and we say that is cause and effect. It's a nonsensical explanation from the viewpoint of Ludwig Wittgenstein, and I would say also the last one we read here, How Tongue, and Francis Y. Lynn. We need criterion, and what is the criterion? Well, the criterion is the form that something can be thought. You can think about the shellfish, you can imagine it, and it's a deed. It can be done. If it cannot be done, you have no criterion. That goes for a person as well as a universe. Needs to be done somehow, somewhere. The spiral is most definitely a form of doing, whereas to say cause and effect involves no doing at all whatsoever. You just say cause and effect, and then you're done with it. You're referring to something you cannot understand, or this is what Wittgenstein looked into. We become, by the force of our intelligence seduced into this type of thinking. We get caught up and we start liking this beetle box that we think we can have privately, or externally, a black box that is cause and effect. And the third one, and I like this, the last one, is that the black box, the beetle box, so far, as we mentioned before, the Big Bang and the Big Crunch are actually black boxes that we use to construct the permanent physical laws. The black box here is nothing but superfluous dark matter. They get rid of an incredibly big question mark. Unknown, unobservable, never to be observed most possibly. Dark matter, and replaces it with something that we can understand, that we can make use of, and that can be done, namely the form. And what is more formative than a spiral? I don't know. And look at this as well. I'm just gonna take this off for a second, sorry there. So you might see space itself is actually a sort of a spiral. The Klein bottle, which is here in glass, is a spiral, going inside and outside, obscuring the idea of an absolute border between the exterior and the interior of the mind, what we can think and what we do, showing them to be indeed incredibly aching, very close to each other. Isn't that great? Let me end aside from James and Parker. It is not surprising that the same entropic treatment applies from the nanoscale to the cosmic, since entropy is intrinsically scaleless. It's intrinsically scaleless. It doesn't care about scale at all. And there you get it. So three advantages together, forming a rather massive proof for good old Rupert Sheldrake and his so strongly by him defended theories for decades now. It's been going 4 or 5 decades, I don't know. Tremendous effort put into it, but now it starts to revertebrate all the way into physics itself. Isn't that great? Isn't that a fantastic thing? Makes me happy anyway. Thank you very much for listening in. Have a very beautiful day, morning or afternoon. Bye bye for now.